One man gunned down on the street, a brutal execution by the very people sworn to protect him. But the world didn't know. His son wasn't just anyone. He was a force of nature, and when he arrived, everything changed. Hey, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below, and make sure you like and subscribe for more stories like this. This is the story of Major Cole Benson, and how a single man turned the tables on a corrupt system. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the streets of downtown. People bustled through the sidewalks, minding their own business. But on 12th Avenue, near the old park, the air was thick with tension. The kind of tension that makes your skin crawl. A small crowd gathered, some curious, others with their phones out, recording the scene. Layla Carter, a black woman in her mid-30s, walked with purpose toward the bus stop. She wore a fitted denim jacket, dark jeans, and sneakers that scuffed the pavement with every step. She was a woman used to keeping her head down, walking fast to avoid trouble. But trouble had found her before she even reached the curb. Two police cruisers pulled up on either side of her, blocking her path. The officers inside were young, white, and their eyes had already sized her up as a target. The doors slammed open, and Officer Daniels stepped out, followed by his partner, Officer Harris. Both men wore expressions that screamed distrust. "Hey you," Daniels barked, his hand resting on the gun holstered at his side. "Step back." Layla didn't flinch, but her heartbeat quickened. She had seen too many stories unfold like this, too many black people wrongfully harassed or even killed. But she wasn't afraid, not anymore. I'm just trying to catch my bus," she said calmly, taking a step back, but not looking away from the officers. "You know the drill," Officer Harris sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Let's see some ID." Layla held her ground, her eyes flicking toward the bus coming down the street. "I don't have time for this." Officer Daniels stepped closer. "Then maybe we'll make time for you." His hand shot out, grabbing her arm with more force than necessary. She yanked it back, but before she could react further, Harris moved in and shoved her against the police car. Layla's heart raced, but she refused to show fear. She had a plan. "You're resisting arrest," Daniels shouted, his voice rising. The situation was spiraling, and Layla could feel it. But just as the officers prepared to escalate, a low growl broke through the tension. From behind her, two large, muscular German shepherds appeared out of nowhere, their eyes glowing with alertness, and their fur bristling. They stood poised, not as pets, but as warriors. The officers froze. "Don't move," Daniels yelled, his hand twitching toward his gun, but the dogs moved faster. They advanced toward him with an intimidating snarl, their bodies taut with controlled aggression. Layla's dogs were trained for one purpose: protection, and they'd been trained by the best, military-level trainers, who didn't stop until their dogs could think and react like soldiers. Layla's heart skipped a beat, but she knew the drill. She spoke softly, her voice calm but commanding. The dogs obeyed immediately, sitting back on their haunches, their eyes never leaving the officers. Their presence alone was enough to stop the cops from making any further moves. Daniels and Harris stood frozen, now facing the full intensity of the military-trained animal. "You have no right to touch me," Layla said, her voice unwavering as she stepped forward, her hand moving to gently calm the dogs. "And if you try anything again, they will not hesitate to protect me." The crowd had stopped recording, but murmurs spread like wildfire. Layla wasn't just any woman, she was someone who knew how to handle herself. And now, the entire street was about to find out just how much. Officer Harris gulped and took a step back, his hand still on his gun, but no longer reaching for it. He didn't know what these dogs were capable of, and he didn't want to find out. Daniels, still rattled, tried to regain control. "This is a public safety issue. You can't just..." Layla cut him off. "You're the ones causing the safety issue, not me." She raised her hand, signaling her dogs to stay. The dogs stood in a perfectly still position, ready but not threatening. It was a level of control that only someone with military training could achieve. Layla wasn't just a civilian, she was a woman with power, power that no one expected. "You'll leave me alone now," Layla said, her voice low but commanding. The officers stood there, visibly shaken, not sure how to handle the situation. They had expected to bully her, to intimidate her into submission. But what they had encountered was someone who had been trained to face danger with both calm and strength. "I'll let you go now," Officer Daniels muttered, his voice strained. He stepped back, nodding for Harris to follow. But just as they started retreating, the situation took another unexpected turn. A black SUV pulled up beside the police cruisers. Layla's heart skipped. She didn't know who was in it, but she recognized the tense look on the officers' faces. Whoever was stepping out of that vehicle wasn't going to let this situation go. The door of the SUV opened. The tension in the air was palpable, and the entire street seemed to hold its breath. Layla's dogs remained perfectly still, their eyes locked on the two officers, who were now backed up against the police car, unsure of their next move. The sudden arrival of the black SUV made the whole situation even more unpredictable. The SUV's door opened, and out stepped a woman in a sharp black suit. She was tall, with an air of confidence that instantly demanded attention. Her heels clicked on the pavement as she approached with purposeful strides, her eyes scanning the scene with military precision. The officers had no idea who she was, but Layla's reaction told them everything they needed to know. Layla's body language shifted from defensive to assured, a small but noticeable smile crossing her lips. "Get back in your car," the woman said to the officers, her voice steady and cold. There was no question, no room for resistance. Her words were a command, not a suggestion. The officers hesitated, exchanging glances, clearly unsure whether to follow her order or challenge her. They were already in deep, but whoever this woman was, they didn't want to find out what would happen next. The woman turned to Layla, her gaze softening. "Are you all?" Layla nodded slowly, but her eyes were scanning the situation. The officers had retreated a few paces, but she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The woman in the black suit gave her a brief but knowing look. "I'm here to help," she said. "We need to get you out of here, Layla. Now." Before Layla could respond, the woman turned back to the two officers. "Do you have anything to say for yourselves?" The officers stood frozen. They had no answers, no excuses. The woman's presence had completely dismantled their confidence, and they were now outmatched and outclassed. "Get in the car," the woman ordered again, this time more forcefully. With their pride shattered, the officers reluctantly climbed back into their patrol cars, their faces flushed with embarrassment. As they drove off, the woman turned back to Layla. "Let's go," she said softly. Layla followed her into the SUV without question. She knew that whoever this woman was, she had the power to make things happen, and Layla wasn't about to argue. The dogs followed closely behind, now calm but still alert, their loyalty unwavering. As the SUV sped away, Layla glanced at the woman beside her, studying her. "Who are you?" she asked. The woman smiled. "My name is Agent Ramirez. I work for a federal agency that specializes in cases like yours." She paused, then added, "We've been watching these officers for a while. They have a history of targeting innocent people like you." Layla nodded, her anger rising again as she thought about the events that had just transpired. She had been so used to this kind of treatment, a constant target on her back just because of the color of her skin, but she had never been disrespected so blatantly before. They had crossed a line, and now they would pay the price. As the SUV sped down the road, Agent Ramirez continued, "We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. We've got enough evidence to bring them down, but we need your help." Layla's eyes narrowed. "My help? What do you need me to do?" "We need you to testify. We need to bring their corruption into the light, and the only way we can do that is with your statement. They won't be able to hide behind their badges anymore." Layla sat in silence for a moment. Her mind was racing. This was bigger than just one incident. This was about accountability, about breaking the chains of injustice that had held her and so many others down for years. It was about time someone stood up and fought back. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady and determined. Ramirez smiled. "We've got your back. Now let's finish this." The streets blurred by as the SUV accelerated, but Layla could already see the end of the road ahead. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about changing the future. The black SUV cut through the streets, the sound of the engine growing fainter as it merged with the city's low hum. Inside, Layla's mind raced. Agent Ramirez sat across from her, her hands folded on her lap, her calm demeanor the only thing keeping the tension from exploding. Layla glanced at the woman's stoic expression and couldn't help but feel a growing sense of curiosity. Who was this person? Why was she so sure that Layla could take down the very system that had oppressed her for years? "You've done this before, haven't you?" Layla asked, breaking the silence. Agent Ramirez turned to her, her eyes sharp but soft. "Yes, many times. But this is different. These officers, they've crossed a line. It's not just about racism, it's about power and control. And that's why we need your help." Layla's eyes narrowed. "My help?" "Yes," Ramirez replied, nodding. "You're not just any civilian. You've got the experience. Your military dogs trained for years in the field are a huge asset. We can't afford to underestimate what they're capable of, especially in situations like these." Layla clenched her fists, the anger that had been brewing inside her finally starting to boil over. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't asked to be a symbol of resistance, to be thrust into a battle she never wanted. But that was the world she lived in, wasn't? She'd been harassed, beaten, and brutalized by the system her entire life. But now was the time to fight back. "Fine," Layla said, her voice low but unwavering. "I'll help you. But don't expect me to back down." Ramirez smiled slightly. "We wouldn't expect anything less." The vehicle slowed as they neared a nondescript building in the heart of the city. It was an old warehouse, its walls covered in grime and its windows barely visible through the dirt. It didn't look like much, but Layla knew better than to judge by appearance. This was the kind of place where secrets were buried, where decisions were made without anyone batting an eye. The SUV came to a stop, and Agent Ramirez quickly exited the vehicle. Layla followed, her hand on the door handle ready for whatever was next. Inside the warehouse, a few federal agents were already set up, their faces lit by the soft glow of computer screens. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and fast food, the kind of environment that made Layla feel at home after years in the military. She had been around this kind of operation before, but this time it was personal. "Layla, these are our tech specialists," Ramirez said, introducing the team. They nodded curtly, their eyes quickly scanning her as if they had already sized her up. "We've got intel," one of the specialists said, pointing to the screen. "A local gang, tied to white supremacy, has been in contact with the officers involved in the shooting. We've intercepted messages. They plan to escalate things, targeting you next." Layla froze, her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't just dealing with corrupt officers anymore. Now it was a whole network, one that stretched farther than she could have ever imagined. "They think they can intimidate me," she whispered to herself, her mind racing. "We're not just up against bad cops," Ramirez said, her voice filled with determination. "We're up against an entire system, but we have one advantage: your military dogs. They've been trained to detect danger, to neutralize threats without hesitation." Layla glanced at the doorway, where her two military dogs stood, waiting patiently for her command. They were ready. They were always ready. "They don't know who they're messing with," Layla muttered. Ramirez gave a small nod. "Exactly." The team worked quickly, setting up their operations, downloading footage, and gathering intel. Layla stood by, her arms crossed, her mind focused. The dogs had been her allies for years, their training starting back when she had first joined the military. Now those years of preparation were about to come to fruition. The gang didn't stand a chance. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, a call came in. The officers involved in the attack were scheduled to meet with the gang at a local warehouse later that evening. The plan was, Layla knew what had to be done. "We go in fast, we go in hard," Layla said, her voice like steel. "We take them down before they even know what hit them." Agent Ramirez looked at her, eyes full of respect. "Are you ready?" Layla's lips curled into a fierce smile. "I was born ready." As the night fell, the team made their way toward the warehouse where the meeting was set to take place. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Layla's military dogs walked beside her, their eyes sharp and their muscles coiled, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. The plan was simple: take down the officers, neutralize the gang members, and expose the truth for the world to see. But nothing ever goes as planned, especially when dealing with those who think they're above the law. Layla knew that this would be the fight of her life, but she with those who think they above the law. The night had fully descended, and the warehouse was eerily quiet. The sound of distant sirens echoed in the night, a reminder that the streets outside were tense, filled with the knowledge that something big was happening. Layla's heart pounded in her chest, but her face remained calm. The dogs walked quietly beside her, their every movement calculated, poised for the strike. It was a feeling Layla knew well. She wasn't just a civilian anymore. She was a soldier, an unstoppable force. They reached the outskirts of the warehouse, a looming structure on the edge of town. The lights inside flickered intermittently, casting shadows across the walls. Layla's team, including Agent Ramirez and the tech specialists, were already in position. They had scouted the building, mapped the exits, and had set up surveillance. But the real action was about to start. "Let's do this," Layla said, her voice low but determined. She gave a slight hand signal and immediately the dogs moved ahead, following their master's every command. With a smooth motion, Layla pulled her night vision goggles over her eye. As she and the team advanced toward the front entrance, her military dogs were already sniffing out the scents of the men inside. The gang had arrived. Inside the warehouse, the atmosphere was thick with tension. A few of the gang members were gathered around a large, makeshift table, counting money, preparing for something bigger. At the far end of the room, 2 police officers, off-duty but still wearing their uniforms, talked quietly, ignoring the room around. Layla's gut told her they were waiting for something big to happen, something that would tip the scales in their favor. But they didn't know they were being watched. They didn't know who was about to walk through that door. Layla signaled to the team. The time to move had arrived. The dogs, as if on cue, let out a soft growl, their eyes trained on the men inside. The tech specialists already had the building's security cameras hacked, showing the scene in real time. Everything was quiet. Suddenly the doors slammed open. Layla, Agent Ramirez and her team stormed in. The dogs were the first to move, charging forward with precision, as if the gang members were nothing more than obstacles in their way. One man screamed as the massive dogs lunged, pinning him to the ground. The other gang members scrambled in panic, reaching for their weapons. But it was too late. The dogs had already neutralized their first target. "Hands up," Layla shouted, her voice sharp as a whip. The officers looked up in shock, immediately raising their hand. They were clearly out of their depth. Layla knew the look they had expected to dominate, to intimidate. But they hadn't anticipated someone who could fight back, someone who had nothing left to lose. The rest of the team moved in, quickly disarming the remaining gang members, who were now on the floor, held down by the dogs, their bodies trembling. Layla's eyes flicked from one person to the next, keeping her guard up, never letting her focus waver. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins. This was the moment they had been waiting for. "Agent Ramirez," Layla called, her voice steady. "Get the evidence. I want everything on these guys." Ramirez nodded, and within seconds, she was digging through the gang members' belongings, pulling out bags of cash, weapons, and illegal documents. The rest of the team quickly secured the area, making sure no one would escape. One of the gang members tried to make a break for the back door, but Layla's dog blocked his path. The man froze, a look of terror on his face. The dog growled menacingly, its eyes glowing in the dark. The man slowly dropped to his knees, his hands raised in surrender. Layla approached him, her boots silent on the concrete floor. "You're done," she said, her voice cold and unrelenting. "You'll never hurt anyone again." As the last of the gang members was cuffed and led away, Layla turned to the 2 officers still standing, their faces pale. One of them, Officer Daniels, was trembling, sweat dripping down his face. Layla's eyes locked onto him. "You thought you were above the law," she said, her voice low but filled with authority. "You thought you could hide behind that badge, but the only thing you hid behind was your Officer Daniels swallowed hard, his voice shaking. "Please, I didn't mean." Layla cut him off. "You didn't think, and now your actions are going to cost you everything." Behind her, the dogs sat obediently, their eyes still fixed on the officers, as if waiting for her next command. Layla knew it was over. The storm had passed, and the justice she had fought for was finally within reach. The officers would be arrested, the gang was dismantled, the truth had come to light. But as Layla looked at the captured men, something inside her hardened. This wasn't just about the fight, this was about something much larger. It was about exposing the system that allowed people like Daniels to get away with their actions. And Layla was just getting started. The air was thick with tension as the sun began to rise over the warehouse. The criminals, disarmed and cuffed, were lined up like dominoes, shattered by the precision of Layla's military training. The team, composed of agents from multiple agencies, had swept through the building and secured all evidence of the illegal activities tied to the officers and the gang. Layla's heart still raced as she looked over the men she had just neutralized, but her gaze never wavered. She wasn't done yet. "They're all locked up," Ramirez reported as she clicked through the files on her tablet, pulling up the evidence Layla needed for the next phase of their mission. We've got everything: cash, weapons, drugs, and proof that these officers were taking bribes. The rest of it, it's all here." Layla nodded. "This is just the beginning. We can't let this system stand." The officers who had once been in control of the situation were now powerless. But Layla wasn't just interested in taking down a corrupt few. She wanted to bring down the entire system. A system that allowed men like Officer Daniels and Sergeant Harris to get away with what they did for far too long. One of the gang members was still struggling, eyes wide with terror. "You can't do this to us," he spat at Layla. "We have powerful connections. You'll regret this." Layla didn't flinch. "The only thing I regret is waiting this long to fight back." She stepped forward, her eyes hardening. "You think you have power? You think you can intimidate me? I've faced worse than you. I've faced an entire system that was set up to break me. But here I am." As the words left her mouth, she felt the power of them sink in. She wasn't just speaking to the gang member. She was speaking to all the people who thought they could take advantage of others for their own gain. "And now, your time is up." The sound of sirens filled the air again, this time from a different direction. The feds were finally here, ready to take control of the situation, and with them came the spotlight that Layla had long awaited. They would bring every piece of evidence to light. They would ensure that no officer or gang member involved in this heinous scheme would escape justice. But there was more at stake than just the criminals. As the federal agents began transferring prisoners, the news vans pulled up. The chaos of the street outside seemed to escalate, with protesters marching and chanting. They had seen the truth, the videos and the evidence. Justice for Layla began trending online. The world was watching. In the midst of the crowd, Layla caught the gaze of a reporter. He was holding his camera, hesitating. "Miss Carter, can we get a statement?" he asked, his voice hesitant but full of curiosity. Layla didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, standing tall, letting the spotlight of the cameras find her. "We've been saying this for years. I've fought to make it known. But today, the truth is out. I'm not just fighting for myself anymore. I'm fighting for everyone who has ever been silenced, for everyone who has been told their life doesn't matter, for everyone who has been abused by the system. It's over." The crowd erupted into applause as the reporter captured every word. Layla knew this moment would be replayed on every major news channel across the country. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a symbol of resistance, a symbol of strength. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Daniel, Layla's brother, had just gotten a call from his superior. The truth about what had happened was finally beginning to reach the highest levels of government. The officers involved in the shooting of Elijah Carter were being investigated, and the truth about the corruption within the department would be laid bare. "You did good, Layla," Daniel said over the phone, his voice calm but full of pride. "But this isn't over yet. It's just the start. You've set the foundation for everything else to come." Layla smiled to herself, her heart filled with satisfaction. She had done it. She had stood her ground, defied the odds, and brought the truth to the surface. And now, the world would have to deal with it. She looked out at the crowd, at the people chanting, at the signs that read, "No justice, no peace." And for the first time in her life, Layla Carter felt a deep sense of peace. It wasn't over, but it was a victory, and she would never stop fighting.